Good morning, aspirants. It's 27th of November today, and I welcome you all on today's edition of What to Read in the Hindu newspaper. I'm 𝗗𝗶𝗹𝘆 𝗡𝗲𝗄𝗧, Senior Mentor at Prepp IAS. While going through the articles, we will not only see its relevance with regard to prelims and mains, but we'll also try interlink it with other GS papers as well. I am here to align your newspaper reading as a part of our GS syllabus. So let's get started. The very first article, which is very important from today's paper, talks about will consider plea to revive NJAC and Collegium system of judicial appointments, says CJI. So when we map this particular article in our syllabus, this will fall under GS paper 2 under the theme judiciary, separation of power, constitutional amendments, judicial appointments, parliament and state legislature, functioning and power issues with respect to judiciaries, right? So the key theme that has been discussed over here is there has always been a debate with regard to opacity of appointment in judiciary, wherein collegial system is the present system that is there. And the center tried to bring some sort of transparency by getting an equal stakeholder in the appointment process in the form of NJAC that they introduced as a part of 99th Constitutional Amendment Act. So for prelims perspective, we need to know about Article 124.217 that deals with appointment of judges. Then 99th Constitutional Amendment Act that talks about NJAC. Then NJAC composition, who all would be the important stakeholders in the appointment process of higher judiciary. What is doctrine of basic structure? 2015 judgment that strike down NJAC, on what ground and what were the observations for the same and recommendations to change. For mains perspective, we need to know NJAC judgment. Is the collegium system constitutionally sustainable or not? Judiciary executive relations and separation of powers, transparency versus judicial independence, and also parliament's constituent power and limits of judicial review in the decision of judiciary. So this is how this particular article is to be holistically seen and is very much important for today's paper. Now let's move on to next important article that is there and is on editorials page, which must be read, and that talks about limited room. India must reduce dependence on oil imports to stabilize rupee. So the key concept that has been discussed over here is about the weakening or depreciation of Indian rupee, approximately by 7% due to several external and internal factors. So the key theme that has been discussed over here is the pressures in the form of tariffs, widening current affair deficit, bullion imports, RBI intervention with 50 billion forex sales and currency swap agreements, but policy space remains limited so far to reduce the depreciation of INR. So it is relevant for GS paper 3 under the theme Indian economy, wherein currency, forex, current account deficit and external sectors can be read and revised. Also relevant for with regard to money supply and RBI tools. So for prelims perspective, we need to know about managed float, what it is, liquidity swaps agreement, current account deficits, its basic concept, forex reserves in the current time that India has, what is hot money flows, what is FPI, impact of oil imports on current account deficit, and factors affecting exchange rate altogether. For mains perspective, we need to know global headwinds and emerging market currency risk, assessing RBI's role in stabilizing INR without compromising growth, India's vulnerability due to crude dependency and trade policy that we have with other important nations in the form of Japan, ASEAN, and UAE. This is how this particular article is to be holistically read and revised. The next important article that catches our attention talks about presidential opinion versus federal structure. So while going through this particular article, this majorly talks about a criticism wherein presidential power has been seen to be misused, arguing it often weakens federalism, it emboldenments of unelected constitutional authorities in the form of CBI, and it tilts towards the center, right? For when we map this particular article in our syllabus, this will fall under GS paper 2 under the theme federalism, wherein center-state relations, role of governor, president, and constitutional checks and balances can be linked. Also, for judiciary and the basic structure doctrine that has been devised by the several judgments. So this is how it is to be seen. For prelims perspective, the simpler factual information and important arenas that we have to unfold while going through this particular article talks about Article 200, Governor's Assent, Article 153 to 161, wherein governor's power has been discussed, what is basic structure doctrine, Finance Commission devolution. For mains perspective, we need to know about governor's discretion. Is it threat to cooperative federalism or not? Analyzing the recent trends wherein delays in assent, misuse of agencies, and GST compensation disputes has been highlighted. Threat of central overreach in the form of frequent CBI and ED raids against opposition members and opposition ruled states, cess routes and conditional schemes that many states alleges center is trying to impose on them, and also judicial review of governor and president action. This is how this particular article is to be seen for today's paper. The next important article that is there in the paper and that talks about is fighting the FAR. COP 30 sought to change the narrative by focusing on implementation. So the key theme that has been discussed in this particular article primarily talks about COP 30. It emphasized the implementation, just transition, and adaptation finance, marking 10 years of Paris Agreement as a global warming edges 1.5 degrees Celsius intermittently, right? So this majorly talks about now the action is to be done. Implementation is to be done, whatever targets several countries has adopted for themselves. It is relevant for GS paper 3 under the theme environment, wherein climate change, UNFCCC and COP can be read and revised. Also relevant for GS paper 2 international relations, climate coalitions, and can be used for essay paper as well, wherein environment, sustainable growth and multilateralism can be discussed. For prelims perspective, we need to know about Paris climate and its obligations. What are NDCs? NDCs with respect to India's that we have to write. Adaptation versus mitigation measures, RED plus, RED double plus, loss and damage fund, UNFCCC structure. For mains perspective, the same article is to be seen through the lens of why global climate negotiations remains polarized, India's role in climate negotiations, challenges of economic growth versus decarbonizations, equity, CBDR, climate finance obligations of global north towards global south. So this is how this particular article is to be holistically read and revised. The next important article that is there in the paper and that catches our attention talks about the INO that wasn't and the JUNO that is. This particular article talks about China completes the JUNO Neutrino Observatory as India's long delay INO project remains struck due to procedural lapses, politics, and public opposition, leading to a loss of scientific leadership in the right direction. It is relevant for GS paper 3, science and tech, wherein space, particle physics, research infrastructure can be linked. Also, indigenization of technology can be emphasized. For prelims perspective, we need to know about neutrinos and their types, neutrino oscillations, role of underground observatories International collaboration in big sciences. For mains perspective, the same article is to be seen through the lens of scientific delay is quoted as strategic delays. Challenges in establishing large science space infrastructure in India. Public perception versus scientific literacy. Need for reforms in research funding and project management. So this article is to be seen holistically in this particular manner. The next important article that is there in the paper and that catches our attention is about Constitution is document of our national pride, says President Murmu. So this is relevant for GS paper 2 Indian Constitution, talking about its feature, philosophy, and knowing about every terminology that has been used in preamble. Also relevant for GS paper 2 Parliament and constitutional bodies. Other papers such as ethics, wherein values, constitutional morality can be quoted. And while in essay, constitutionalism, debates, democratic ethos can be read and revised. The key theme that has been talked in this particular article, President 𝗨𝗏𝗄𝐻 Murmu reiterates that Constitution is sacred text of the Republic, the source of national pride, democratic identity, and the foundation of equality and justice. The speech comes at a time of intense debate on federalism, judicial appointment, and constitutional interpretation. This makes the message politically significant that the India would be run by the ethos, philosophy of our constitution. So for prelims perspective, the arenas that we have to read and revise talks about preamble and its keyword, fundamental rights versus DPSP, basic structure doctrine, 42nd and 44th Constitutional Amendment Acts, parliamentary democracy features, terms like constitutional morality, republic, and sovereignty. For mains perspective, the same article is to be seen through the lens of Constitution as a moral compass. Is it India witnessing a shift from constitutionalism to majoritarian politics? Challenges to constitutional values in the form of rising governor and center conflicts, agencies overreach, judicial versus executive turf, and social polarizations. Role of president as the constitutional guardian of our constitution. Right? This is how this particular article is to be holistically read and revised. The last important article for the day is about Cabinet approves rupees 7,280 crore schemes for rare earth magnet. So every year in prelims, one or the other resource based or mineral based question often asked. So this could be one such potential area that can be tagged as an important revisor for our exam. So relevant for GS paper 3 economy, wherein manufacturing, industrial policy can be linked. Also relevant for GS paper 3 science and tech, wherein strategic minerals and rare earth elements can be linked. For environment, wherein mining, sustainability, processes and issues can be linked. So for prelims perspective, we need to know about rare earth mineral. What are they? Their types in the form of lanthanides, strategic importance of these minerals, India's rare earth reserves, the location, afterwards PLI schemes, basics that has been launched for it, usages in wind turbines, mobiles, defense systems, which country dominates it across the world. So this is how this particular article is to be holistically read and revised. This is all from my end for today's Hindu newspaper. Till we meet for the next time, take care and goodbye. Keep learning and keep growing.